Hi, this is Jodie Sweetin, and welcome to Awkward Conversations. Today's episode is going to be from a season 2 of Awkward Conversations, where we were joined by Agent Timothy McMahon, who talked to us about the signs of use. Today, we are talking about the signs of drug use and what to do if you discover that your child is using drugs or has started abusing substances. It can be a really, really scary time. It can feel really overwhelming. It can feel really frightening. But just remember, it's not going to go away. You can't ignore it, and the sooner you deal with it, the better. So today I am joined by Special Agent Timothy P. McMahon, who has been employed by the DEA since 1998. He is going to be here today talking with us about what to do if you find out that your kids have been using drugs or you find something in their room. And of course, we're joined by Amy McCarthy, our fabulous LCSW out of Boston Children's Hospital. You know, realizing that your child needs help can be a really scary situation for a parent. And I think some parents, they want to pretend it's not there. They're totally overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. So we're hoping that today, through these conversations, we can really help parents find the resources and things that they need, because these problems do not go away on their own, and we want to take care of them as soon as we find out that something's going on. Now, Tim, you have a program and you go around to different places talking to parents, educators, where you set up a mock room and you show people and teach people and parents where kids and what kids use to hide some of their drug use. I worked in drug and alcohol treatment for about 6 years. I have I have tossed many a room to look for, contraband and things like that. But I think parents really need to find out the best ways to do that. So if you could tell us a little bit about what you do and some of the places that parents should really be looking, that would be great.
Yeah, in speaking with some parents, some are hesitant to go into their children's bedroom because they're looking at it as an invasion of privacy, and they don't want to violate their son or daughter's privacy by going through their things in their room. But to kind of make the point, I've spoken with parents who unfortunately have lost a son or daughter to an overdose, and up to a year or more later, they're still finding hiding spots throughout the house that their son or daughter used to hide their drugs. So, again, especially teenagers and young people will go through extremes to try and hide their drug use and make it very, very difficult for others to be able to detect.
Right. And I think, one of the things that talking about that and saying, what we were saying earlier, like, this is my job as your parent, is to keep you safe. I don't want to invade your privacy. I don't want to read your journal. I don't want to, but I'm going to go in there and look for things to keep you safe. And it's hard. And that's that's always the point of contention, right? Between teens and parents is, I want to do this. And the parent is like, I have to be the, I have to be the guardrail and keep you safe. And sometimes that means you're not going to like me very much. And I'm really sorry.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I'm not necessarily talking about going in and completely trashing the bed, the whole bedroom. But it's going in. If you're going in to drop off the laundry, take a look around the room, see what's there. If you go back in, a few days later and, there's a bottle of water or a can of soda sitting on the end table and it hasn't moved, pick it up and look at it, because they sell those items as storage containers. I have a water bottle here that's, you give it a twist and you have a little storage container there, and it has actual water in it. So looking at it, it looks like something that you wouldn't look at twice. So, go in the bedroom, look around, open the drawers, flip through the clothes. If you open the drawers, don't forget to feel underneath the drawer, because all you need is a piece of tape to stick something underneath or in the back of the drawer. In the closet, especially, in the states where, we have cold winters, in the summertime, where the winter coat is stored in the back of the closet. Check the pockets, because that would be a great place to hide something. everyday items that can be purchased off the internet. And most of these items, there is absolutely no age restriction. Different types of pipes that you can buy. And they're not the traditional, bongs and all that. Here, a little ceramic dinosaur, but it has the little bowl underneath for the marijuana, and you would inhale through the back of the tail. Things like that a parent walking in may not pay any attention to, think it's just some type of a glass ornament. Things that you don't have to, order from a website, just a tennis ball. All you need is a razor blade, put a little slit in it, and now you have a little storage container. Who's going to pay attention to, a tube of tennis balls in a bedroom? They're not out of place. So it's all things like that. That's why we call the program Hidden in Plain Sight, because it's things that are right under your nose. And again, in speaking with parents who have been through this, pretty much most of the items that we use in our display are items that they have told us about that they have found. We just stress to parents that if a teenager is using something, in their mind it's going to be, well, if mom and dad came in, where would they look? Because that's not where I'm going to put it.
Tim, those are some really amazing tips to kind of look for. I think in our program, we see some similar things that parents and young people report to us. Some other examples are behind like picture frames on the wall. Again, kids can easily tape something onto their books in their bookshelf. You can easily make a hole for something and, who's looking inside the books. Another thing that we see a lot is because, like you mentioned, you can order things offline kind of at any age. There's not much restriction. Is kids having like their own separate Amazon account or their account online. And now you can follow kind of like the, delivery truck from house to house. So they might not even get it delivered to their house. It's the next door neighbor who they know is on vacation or the house that's for sale. And so just being mindful of, are you seeing like random Amazon boxes or, just kind of being mindful of like, why are they going across the street?
And even for kids, just knowing that their parent is going to be potentially looking through their stuff and looking through their room to keep them safe, I feel like can help kids, have that ability to say no when the peer pressure comes, like, oh, my mom searches my room. I can't do that. Like, I'm not going to bring it home. Just knowing that your family is involved and that your parents are there trying to be that safety net for you, I think can really help kids, avoid substance use in the first place. And I know, Amy, you and I have talked about this before, even last season.
Yeah, I think, for those who are worried about that invasion of privacy, being able to kind of put it out there and, so your child's aware, like, this will be happening, helps kind of restore some of that trust. They're not kind of taken off guard. The other side to that, of course, though, is that they might not be taken off guard as much. And so they may also find other hiding spaces for some of these things. And so you need to be kind of, aware of that. And so that's why I think also expanding, I'm also, as a parent going to be looking in your backpack. I'm going to be checking your winter coat. I'm going to be checking your car, your glove compartment, somewhat regularly. And so it's less about the power and control of like you just being able to go in their room because you can. And more just like what we've all said here, it's more about, limits are love. I care about you. This is my job as a parent. I wouldn't be serving you. I wouldn't be supporting you in the way that you deserve if I wasn't doing these things, actually, which again might be hard to understand, but is the cold, hard truth.
Right. Well, it's hard for kids to understand when their parents are acting in their best interest and it's ruining their fun, their friends, their, and that's the hardest job of parenting is sometimes being the person that they don't really like. You're watching Awkward Conversations Season 4.
Saving lives means staying informed. Knowing the dangers of using fake prescription pills can help those you care about and keep our community safe. As a parent, educator, neighbor, or friend, we all play a role in building safe and healthy futures for ourselves and our loved ones. Do your part to take the first step today. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com to access education, prevention, and treatment resources. Fake prescription pills laced with fentanyl are deadly. Be their protector. Be informed. Visit GetSmartAboutDrugs.com.
Welcome back to Awkward Conversations Season 4. Now, you brought up something, Amy, that chances are if, you have these suspicions and if you're doing room searches or you're looking through things and you do find something, where do we go from there? What happens at that moment? I know that moment when a parent finds, some sort of substance in their child's room can be terrifying. It's overwhelming. You in that moment probably feel like you failed. And I think one of the important things too to talk about is that people of any age, gender identity, economic status, addiction touches everyone's lives. And I think the more we realize that, and the more we can get away from the stigma of somehow it being a personal failure or that we vilify those people, I think can be really helpful too.
Yeah, the hardest part sometimes is, finding that first, set of substances or instances that your child has been using substances. And so, taking a step back if you need to, if you feel like the emotions and the anger and the fear are kind of rising, taking that step back, taking a breath, making a plan, I think is the first thing I would advise parents to do. The second thing is I would approach that conversation with as much love and kind of empathy as you can, and trying to, again, separate those feelings of fear and anger. When I talk to young people about their substance use, I often start with kind of, acknowledging like, I get why people might use substances. And my desire here is to understand why you might be using substances. And so being able to kind of put it out there, not, nobody should use drugs, drugs are bad, those types of things actually tend to kind of isolate, kids from the conversation more. And so being able to say like, I get that there might be some reasons that you're using these substances, and I'd like to understand those reasons more. And also, I also still can't permit you to be using substances. And so we need to make a plan about how we get to a place where there is abstinence or there is no substance use. And so, at that point, I think being able to provide education, I think actually even in thinking about providing education, asking them like, well, what do you know about some of these substances? And allowing them to kind of take the lead on the conversation. Because again, like, as we all know from being kids and teens, being lectured just, doesn't feel very good. And it often kind of shuts us down, ultimately. And so the more that you can kind of ask open-ended questions and put them in the driver's seat to kind of, and again, open-ended questions, not like, explain to me like what's going on here, what you've done wrong. But like, I'm coming from a place of wanting to understand what's going on, and needing to understand what's going on. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to respond with anger or upset or frustration initially. There may be some consequences to this kind of ultimately, but let's first take some time to understand the situation at hand. And then from there, being able to, again, reach out to your resources, that you have available, whether that be your child's school, a coalition, that works to prevent substance use in your community, your child's pediatrician. There's programs like the ones I work for at Boston Children's Hospital called the Adolescent Substance Use and Addiction Program, or ASAP, where a team of doctors and nurse practitioners and psychiatrists and social workers come together to kind of evaluate and assess, what's the severity here, and be able to offer recommendations and support. And there are programs like that all over the country. I know we've mentioned this, a couple of times already, but there's that SAMHSA locator tool that we'll put in the show notes here, where you can also find some of those programs closer to home.
Great. Thank you so much. And what I hear both Tim and Amy saying is that when you have these conversations, we have to start the conversations early. And this is what we've talked about. Start the conversations about substance use, and building those bonds and building that open line of communication. And I think, for parents, don't take it personally. I think that's one of the biggest things as a parent that I've had to learn is don't take it personally. This isn't necessarily directed at you. This is something that your kid is going through, and coming at them like you guys have talked about with understanding and compassion and consequences and a firm boundary is going to get you, I think, a lot further in these conversations than yelling and screaming and taking everything away. I'm sure, Tim, for you hear a lot of parents when they find these items. I mean, I can't imagine, the shock and it's terrifying. When, you open the tennis ball and there's 20 pills,
Right. Yeah. And like Amy said, so many people initially, when they confront their son or daughter, want to take it to the extreme as far as possibly yelling and screaming. And, pretty much all that's going to do is shut their child down, where they're not going to be able to have that conversation. So it is very important to kind of take a step back, gather your thoughts, and then sit down and have that back and forth conversation to find out why are they using whatever the substance is. And as a parent, you don't want to think about your son or daughter using some type of substance. When I go over that with the groups that I speak to, I say, listen, everything I'm talking to you about, you can be doing at home, and your son or daughter could still use some substance. But the main thing is to know that you did everything that you could do. And then ultimately, that child made that decision. But once that happens, okay, now let's deal with it. Let's figure out how we can stop it and how to get the help that's needed to move forward.
One of the most important things is really, as that moment happens, taking advantage of the opportunity right then and there. I know we've all heard stories of, kids that have, maybe their parents found something close to graduation and their parents just wanted to get through and let them have fun and do whatever that they could to, enjoy and celebrate their graduation. And then they wind up ODing on grad night. This is when you find these substances, it's not the time. Yes, you need to take a step back and figure it out, but you got to address the situation, as quickly as possible, because the situation will only get worse. And with each time that they use or engage in substance abuse, it can only lead to that much more danger. And these counterfeit pills and things like that are really scary, and being able to talk to our kids openly and honestly and say, look, this is different. It's different this time. One pill can kill. And, again, 25 is kind of that magic age that if we can get kids to the point of not using substances and abusing substances by the age of 25, that's kind of the magic number, right, Amy? That brain development is sort of solidifying, and they have a much less likely chance of developing addiction problems in the future.
Yeah, I would say that that's one of the biggest things that we emphasize with the young people that we work with and their families, is that 25 number. And everybody's brain still develops differently. So, it's not an exact science, but the closer you get to that age with the least amount of substances being introduced to your brain, the better off that you're going to be. And kind of on the flip side of that, like we've talked about already, the younger, the onset of substance use, that's the biggest predictor for, chronic and ongoing substance use disorders. That, the sooner that you start that process, and the harder it is also to kind of, disengage from those substances. So again, I think, it just reinforces that point that the further out we can get. Sometimes I talk with the young people that I work with about, getting to college graduation and getting to kind of like, after college. And it's hard to think about the future when your brain is also developing, especially that part of the brain where long-term thinking and long-term rewards aren't there. But, to be able to introduce that a little bit, I think is really important.
Now, what are some of the signs that parents can look for when they think that things are changing with their kids a little bit? And it can be hard because teenagers, young adults, young people can, they can be moody. They're going through all sorts of changes in their brain and their hormones and all of that. So some of this can be sort of typical behavior, but what are the things that we need to look for that are some of the signs that something might be going on to maybe take those next steps to start, opening some drawers and looking through rooms if we see some areas of concern? I'd love to hear, what parents can be looking for.
Yeah, just looking out for, some obvious signs. If their child has always been active in after-school activities or sports, and now they meet a new group of friends and all of a sudden they're not participating in sports or whatever activity they were involved in. They have no drive to do anything. They're sleeping much more. Their grades, a big change downward in their grades, things to look out for. Maybe getting into some type of confrontations in school, confrontations back and forth with mom and dad or their siblings over really nothing, and just an overall general change in personality, could all be indicators. Now, any one of them doesn't necessarily obviously mean that, oh my God, they're using some type of substance. But when you start putting things together, it starts forming a little picture where definitely things need to be looked into a little bit deeper.
Tim, I love what you said about that change in personality, because I also have seen it kind of sometimes be the opposite, where you have a child who maybe is kind of like a little bit irritable or isn't really kind of functioning as well. And all of a sudden you see this drastic increase. They have more energy. They're, seemingly, more happy, and that sometimes can also mean that, they're using substances now, which is creating this lift off of them because they're now finding this unhealthy coping mechanism of using substances. And so that's, that kind of shift one way or the other, like you said, isn't cause for, absolutely jumping to conclusions that they're using substances. But I think it's definitely something to kind of have parents keep it in the front of their kind of mind to be looking into and just kind of considering overall.
And so many of those signs are also some of the signs of depression, anxiety, stress, things that can lead to substance abuse if that's not happening already. So, if you see those signs and things going on, they may not be to the point of using substances yet, but they could be going through some depression and still need mental health services, some therapy, things like that, so that they don't turn to substances to try and deal with some of those feelings and problems. So I think as soon as parents see signs of their kids really changing behavior, things are just not what they were, it should be a red flag to get them some help, to get them someone to talk to, because you might be able to intervene before they actually get to the point of using substances.
So something else that we see also is kids either having more money than like they're accustomed to, or without cause, that they're not working, or even if they are working. And that doesn't mean that you see them with copious amounts of cash kind of lying around. It might be, they're going out to dinner with a friend, they're going to movies, but like they're not asking you for money all of a sudden. That could mean that, that they're either trading kind of substances for kind of like cash as a commodity, or it could be that they might even be involved in kind of dealing substances. And so now they're, having a cash flow. Or of course, if they're now asking you for money much more often, and it doesn't kind of make sense, what they're asking you for, then that's kind of cause for concern. And we often advise families to be very mindful about monitoring, money and kind of cash flow, debit cards, bank accounts, Venmo, Cash App. There's so many ways now to kind of exchange money, and it's important to stay on top of all those different types of ways to monitor how is the money kind of coming and going when it comes to your child.
Yeah, and even just noticing on the opposite side of that, as the parent, noticing your money missing, $10 here, $20 here missing, and other valuables from within the house that you notice aren't there anymore. Could definitely be signs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Siblings who are saying like, my birthday money has disappeared, things like that too. Wonderful point, Tim.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Tim and Amy, for joining me in this conversation today. We talked a lot about the signs of possible substance abuse, and by no means is this an exhaustive list of everything that may be going on with your particular child. But the most important thing that we know and that we keep coming back to, especially in this series, is that knowing your child, having a relationship, having that bond with your child is really one of the most important ways that you can prevent substance use. And if they are getting involved in substance use, knowing and having that relationship with your child is the one thing that can really help intervene. So, again, we listen, we talk, and we try to have these awkward conversations as best as possible. But Tim, Amy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
We're out of time today, but join us next week for another episode of Awkward Conversations Season 4. Today, we have some wonderful guests on our show who are going to tell us about some resources that are available to parents and caretakers if they suspect that their child is using drugs, and how to have those conversations and be proactive about getting your kids the help that they need.
One of the things that have kind of come along recently is the implementation of 988 nationwide. For us in the state of Oklahoma, 988 has become the automatic hub for any type of resource, whether it be substance use or mental health.
When families are stuck and they're not really sure where to turn, their pediatrician is a wonderful resource for sure.
What is the best way for parents to be able to support their kids through this journey of finding recovery, but also to have that initial, very awkward conversation?
Making sure you're in a safe space when you're ready to have that conversation. Making sure that you're in an area in which you feel safe as a parent and your child as well.
Most people that actually go and receive formal treatment and other kinds of treatment actually get into long-term recovery. So it's really not a bad track record. I think it's just a matter of really how it is that we come together to support.
This is about providing them with the resources, the support, and being able to guide them to recovery.
Make sure to check out getsmartaboutdrugs.com. Parents, caregivers, you can find so many resources of great information there about how to talk to your kids and make these conversations a little less awkward. A huge thank you to the Elks DAP, which is the largest all-volunteer nationwide drug awareness program, and also a huge thanks to the DEA for their outreach program and for making this possible.
The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Awkward Conversation series are solely those of the individuals, speakers, commentators, experts, and/or hosts involved, and do not necessarily reflect nor represent those of the production, associates, or broadcaster, or any of its employees. Production is not responsible and does not verify for accuracy any of the information contained in the series available for viewing. The primary purpose of this series is to educate and inform. This series does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. This series is available for private, non-commercial use only. The production, broadcaster, or its channel cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed during this program.